Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome you to the third session of our industry forum on content production and management for digital TV and platform in Africa. My name is Benjamin Pius. I'm the publisher of Broadcast Media Africa. This particular session, industry session, is an interesting one. It's looking at the whole issue of how do you acquire content for publishers, for producers, for content creators, and for broadcasters in Africa. We will be looking at the whole issue of licensing. We'll be looking at co-production and commissioning, and how do we go from there? And to handle this, I have an illustrious panel set. I have with me Ms. Mapi Mlangu, who is the founder of M-Insight Content Creation from South Africa. I also have Khaleda Stokes. Khaleda is the GM, General Manager and Executive Director for Dominion TV in Ghana. And then I have Danny Musira. Danny is Managing Director, East Africa for Trace. Now, to start, I would like to throw the ball to the panelists to give us a little bit more background context about themselves. Khaleda, if I start with you, please.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Khaleda Stokes. I go by Kay to make it easier for everyone. I am the General Manager and Executive Director of Dominion Television based in Accra, Ghana. For about 4 years now, Dominion Television has launched onto a newer platform, actually now, where we have about 80 countries where we're seen. We're on the DSTV platform, MultiChoice, as well as the View Media platform based in the UK. So it's been about 4 years since we've started this effort to launch our content onto our original content as well as acquired content onto these platforms. For us, we started as a part of a church ministry based in Accra. The Archbishop Nicholas Duncan Williams, he initiated and founded Dominion Television and decided to launch a full service production and media company here in Ghana. And so 4 years ago, after we did that, we decided we wanted to do something different as it relates to inspirational content. So as opposed to just preaching and teaching and what you see on other Christian-based networks, we have prided ourselves in doing documentaries, full-length films, featuring them, acquiring them, as well as producing on our own. We also have major partnerships with a lot of the US companies, TCT, TLN, CBN, as well as the Word Network, which is a prominent African-American network that we work with. So in terms of us acquiring content, we're about, I'd say about 80% acquire content, and then we have a lot of content that we produce on our own. We're currently working on some projects with some US providers as well. So we're just starting our tour, I guess, in the Pan-African space, not being in the media space for a long time, but we've been able to develop some great partnerships and co-production agreements abroad.
Okay, excellent. Danny.
Okay, so my name is Danny Mushira. I'm the Managing Director for Trace in East Africa. Trace is an entertainment empowerment platform and brand. We look to develop content from various artists, creatives across the continent, but also various markets we operate in, and are able then to position that in various platforms that we own and run. And I think the platforms then run from traditional platforms, TV, radio, but increasingly digital platforms. So I think part of our big initiative really is empowering people and creatives that we work with, so to be able to enable them stand up and shine. So that's what Trace is all about, what we're doing with Trace in East Africa. I think part of our key key ask or key delivering markets we are in really is around how do we increasingly create content that is unique, content that is able to travel through various markets, but also content that is flexible, diverse enough to sit on various platforms, increasingly new digital platforms that are coming on board. Yeah, so that sums it up.
Excellent. Let me yield to Mappy. Mappy?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Mappy Mhlangu, founder and managing director of the company called Mindsight Content Creation. Before founding this company, I was data and managing director of the 24-hour news channel in South Africa. At Mindsight, we really are focused on producing content, but it's not your traditional content. So it varies from research, where we do a lot of research for international agencies or media. We also have a list of thought leaders around the continent that we make available to different television stations on different topics around the continent. And then I also work with Nation Brand. So what I do with Nation Brand is this move of creating content hub Nation so that they can put out content that is attractive to investors and content that that news organization doesn't get necessary time to produce them because obviously they are not sensational, but this is the content that they would like potential investors to know and also to increase tourism.
Excellent. But first, right, here we have Liz. Welcome on board. I see you.
Thank you.
You've conquered the technical issues that was beset.
I have conquered it.
You're welcome. Liz is the CEO of Creative Garage. You are based in Kenya, I think. Is it
Nairobi.
Nairobi,
Yes.
Kenya. So can you just take over from me and tell us more about yourself and what you do?
Okay, so my name is Liz Kilili. I run an organization called Creative Garage here in Nairobi. It's an arts collective and we support creatives. And the key goal is to get market access for the creatives that we work with. But I think more importantly for this conversation, maybe more importantly is a project that you have. It's called Calabash. So Calabash is a view on demand platform that you have. And we stream movies, podcasts, music, everything. So we have a database of 13,000 creatives. 60% of those are content creators, and that's where we get our content from.
Excellent. So
yes.
So you have a platform basically of
yes, we have a
creators.
platform.
And these content creators are essentially, we'll talk about how you monetize your platform or how it helps the industry later on. But these content creators are essentially mostly producers of audiovisual content, TV.
Audiovisual content, yes.
Right. Excellent.
Yes.
All right. So in that case, let's carry on, and I will start with Kay. Kay, remind us of what you see as current content acquisition middle status in.
Sure. Well, here in Ghana, it's mostly just contacting the content creators directly, and arranging for maybe co-production agreements or licensing agreements for a period of time. One of the challenges I'd say in that is just the costings that we're presented with in most cases from local content creators. I think that we have been, I'd say, successful in partnering with producers and kind of bringing them in to the table and helping them to get those, being that the platform, if you will, to get the creative out of them. That's been very useful for us, is working directly with the producers so that it's not a lot of red tape or middlemen involved in the whole process. But I think the costings have been a challenge just in making sure that we are effectively getting the product that we want for the price that we're paying for it, as well as the consistency. A lot of times there's a one-off product that we think maybe we've invested marketing, we've invested, talent, resources, you name it in, and we don't get the return as a network. So for us, that has been something we are working around again by going directly to producers, kind of like bringing them on as consultants, and also doing some capacity building with them. I think it's very important that when they come and work with us, or any network rather, they should leave a trail. There should be something that leaves their mark outside of that work that they may have produced with us, so that we're able to build on something and keep things going. Because in television, people don't want to just see the show one time. If it's really good, they want to see it again and again and again and again. So it's very important that the content creator that we have give us something to leave us with a trail, leave us with something that we can take to the next level. And maybe they may be involved at that next level or not, but it's very important for us to engage that way. So for us, the model here in Ghana has primarily been to directly go to the producers, directly go to those content creators, and be that platform for them. We know our place. And our place is the platform. Our place is, we can get you in X amount of markets. We can get you in a Pan-African space. We've now invested in OTT. So now that we have that, we know that that's our place. It's just a matter of partnering with these creatives, partnering with these producers to get the best out of them, and making sure it's cost effective for both of us.
Okay. So, so to your point, the way you're set up is not just for the Ghanaian market.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. We are very much a Pan-African network. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to go and invest in an OTT platform to do, of course, to close the digital divide, if you will, as well as showcase all of Africa, where we have reach everywhere. So there's no need for us to just focus on the local. The local market are our captive eyeballs. They are the people that have supported us since day one. However, we're not closed-minded to the creatives that are across the continent. And we've built a brand, we've built a reputation to address the entire complement. We just did a marketing promotion about Black Music Month, where we featured artists from all over Africa. South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria. We want to make sure that we embrace the entire continent, and then that way it gives us a bigger platform to get creatives to come on and produce with us.
Okay, excellent. Mappy, can you break down these content acquisition models for us? These acquisition models, how does content get acquired in these spaces?
Thanks. Let me first start by good news that have just come through here in South Africa, that the President Cyril Ramaphosa has returned back the law that he was supposed to sign on copyright and the protection of performers, because in our country, the way that content works is that the big mega players and SABC tend to acquire content from producers, but also keep copyright and intellectual property. So that is a traditional way of doing it. They've always had the financial muscle, so they can actually sponsor the entire production cost, but it's their production and they're limited to use it. But there is another way. An institution like ours, when I was at ENCA, I used to pay for a lot of local and international content, and the system that I used to use, I didn't want to keep the content for more than a year. So it was licensing for a certain period, and then I was specific about the number of areas that I will add that content. So it was often what works in terms of getting content. How we get to know about the content is the kind of marketing that has been on the national platform from the country where it originates from. So that's one moment. But we are living in very interesting time. If you look at big mega powers, both here in the continent, Nigeria, South Africa, with the exception of Ghana and Rwanda, economically, they don't have the mass. So public broadcasters will soon realize that they cannot pay for the entire production. They now need to go into partnership, and that presents an opportunity for content creators to own their intellectual property if they are able to, before they go and sell their product to this platform, if they are able to this front by making sure that the content they are producing align with the messages where people are putting a lot of money. So there are a lot of agencies, grant agencies in the continent. There is Africa No Filter, there is your Open Society. There are different foundations that are production and they don't take copyright. So there's an opportunity for really small content creators to enter into those partnerships to make sure they're able to raise some funds for production, so that when they go to your multi-choice, when they go to your SABC, they can say, I've already raised enough money for content. So I'm not selling you the entire property, but I'm licensing you for a certain fixed duration, and I can be able then to take my product to other platforms. What we see, I look at COVID and I've asked myself, what is the good that has come out of the bad situation? So there are a number of things if you look at the narrative around the world. So there's an issue of health where we now need to create a lot of content. But if you look at what is happening internationally with the Black Lives Matter movement, certainly all these other countries, they want to hear from Africa, because if you look at the kind of statues that are being taken out in those countries are people who were involved in slavery. So for content creators, there is now a really great opportunity to produce documentaries that really speak at immigration, at how we became the global world that we are, how we are all scattered around, how there is not one country who can claim that all the citizens of this country were born here. Because if you look at Germany, there were Africans who were taken there during World War, the same thing with slavery in the US. So there are really opportunities, and I call it opportunities because there's a lot of guilt from big American companies who had produced content that continues to stereotype Black people, and suddenly they want to change the narrative. We must be at the forefront of trying to change the narrative, because this is our lived experiences. It is us that has relatives that are scattered around the world. So there are opportunities in terms of content creators, but they really need the core production, and the cooperation is going to be big, because I cannot tell the story of different people in South Africa and not link to Zimbabwe because of the wars that we fought. So I need to have a partner, a content creator from another country. So our stories are interlinked, and there's a great also opportunities in the form of African Continental Free Trade Agreement. We now need to actually find a voice as producers and go to the platform and say, if we're going to open up the continent, one of the key things for us as producers, as content creators, is that it is unreasonable to expect a content creator from the continent to come to Cape Town or to come to South Africa to produce, to make a production and to pay a similar amount as your big Hollywood studios. Yep. If you are going to start trade for and create protection for the continent, we need also to protect the performance industry.
Important point. That is very good. So, Danny, I'll swing back to you. How is this content acquisition, how is the content acquisition situation stacking up from how you see it?
I mean, I think my colleagues in the panel have spoken to, I think, what's topical in the industry at the moment when it comes to content acquisition. But I think for us, it's looking at the value chain of the entire industry, from content generators all the way to broadcasters, and seeing where the linkages are and where areas of collaboration would sit. For example, for us, and increasingly it's important, so things like, because we're creating a lot of music, so when you're creating music, how are you creating it? Not just restricted to one geography. How are you going to borrow from a guy creating great in Johannesburg, linking him up to someone composing in East Africa or in Tanzania with an artist in Tanzania, and ultimately getting a product that has rights apportioned to all these people, and people can then be able to monetize it across the entire value chain at a cost that makes sense. I think increasingly the big issue is what's the cost of generating content, what's the demand, what's the market looking for, and how do you then meet that across platforms that are efficient. I think DTH was a platform that has been a platform of choice because of the reach over a period of time. But I think increasingly we are seeing digital platforms playing a similar role. Obviously, internet penetration becomes an issue, but I think with the increasing rise in number of smartphones, I think there's opportunity to actually create content that is versatile, that can sit on mobile platforms, that creates an easier path when it comes to monetization, and has more value as opposed to before where you had extremely high costs when it came to content production.
All right, let me stay with you for a second, Danny. So within Trace, the company you represent now, how do you guys acquire the content that you put out there? Do you produce it yourself? Do you license? How does it work with Trace?
I think for music is, because music has always been our mainstay. When you look at music content, I think most of the rights reside with the creators of that particular content. So for us, it's really just to provide platforms that broadcast that particular content. And ultimately, the residual is with the creator of the content. So, I mean, it's mostly, we're not acquiring per se in terms, you can't look at us in that perspective. We must provide a platform that creates a path where they can express their creative IP. So that's really what we do. So I think for us, it's a bit different as opposed to your traditional audiovisual platforms that run.
Please.
Yes.
Talk to me about Calabash.
Thank you. So it's interesting how we've set up Calabash, because when I hear my colleagues talk about it, we are a bit different from how the approach is. So our approach is a whole 360 degrees. We look at it holistically in 360 degrees. So as I earlier said, we support the value chain to the market for the creatives that we work with. So what we do is we get creatives from the time their training to get, so we take them through training, through master classes and workshops about how to direct, how to hold cameras, how to do sound and everything. Then once you go through that element, then we've set up a fund, so you're able to access money from the fund that we have set up, and then also heavily invested in equipment. So what that means is they're able to access the equipment, because we realize the most creative are not able to access good equipment to be able to create their content. So we have the equipment, and then now we have the film fund. So from the film fund, we've been able to set up some money thanks to some donors that we work with, international donors. And from that, they're able then to be able to get money that they're able to create their content. And then once they create the content, then the next thing, once you have a good product, then the next thing that the creative is looking for is a market access. Mm-hmm. And that's where now Calabash, the OTT comes in, because now that's where they showcase what they have created. However, when we look at licensing, we own, as an organization, we own 40% rights to what has been produced.
Oh, really?
Because, yes, because of the funding element of it and also the production element of it. Then we own 40% of it, and then 60% is owned by the content creator. Mm-hmm. So, and then also what we don't do is we don't ask for exclusivity.
All right, I was
on the platform. Yes. Mm-hmm. So you're able to have your content on our platform, but you're also able to put the content on any other platform that you would like. So that's how we approach it.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. And how's that going so far? Is it subscriber based?
So with the organization that I run, which is called Creatives Garage, what it is, it's a membership type organization. So it's an arts trust, and members, and we have creatives as members. So we have 13,000 creatives that are registered, 60% of them being content creators. And then now from that pool of creatives is where now we get these creatives and we're able to work with them to be able to produce the content.
So, Kay, I'm coming back to you. What changes are you anticipating in terms of how content, not just being created, to be acquired?
One of the benefits that I found now with transitioning to the digital space is having to create things that are appropriate for the digital space as well as the television space. It's seeming to be much easier for us to be able to set up on platforms similar to Zoom or Teams and create content that's very engaging and transferable to television. So for us, it's been a quite the challenge, but a good challenge to be able to create for both television and the OTT platform. But again, to answer your question, we also offer revenue sharing on our OTT platform as well as our television platform. For sponsorships and marketing initiatives that we have for content creators, we offer that as well. Again, going straight to the producer and those creators has been, again, beneficial for us because the creative control is shared. We know that the quality that we're expecting to go on television, and they bring to the table the creative component, and we, again, know our place as a platform to provide the space for them on our platform.
All right. Now, Mappy, let me come to you and ask this direct question. How are you finding the space for content acquisition from the broadcasting point of view?
I think it would be an exaggeration on my part if I can claim that these licensing deals are fair or are fair to the producers. They haven't for a while because the media industry in the continent has always been centered on certain big players who really can acquire content at the price that they set themselves, and because producers are desperate, they will go for it. Let's take, for example, everybody now has a dream to do some work with Netflix, but we have no idea what is the nature of those licenses, because that's what gives them competitive advantage. So it will never be for content creators, but what content creators can do is to actually educate themselves about what are the options that are there, that are available. So they are basic building blocks for any license, for any license. But there are now nuances that you can include. For example, when you do content now, you need to be very specific about the fact that about adding a line that speak to future, these exclude future technology, because you don't know what technology will be in place after this, and you must make sure that you protect yourself. And secondly, you ought to be very careful when you read a fine line around territories, because yes, if you're doing an OTT, while there is a way of protecting your product to only be viewed in that territory, it's difficult because of piracy. But if you're doing a deal with OTT, with a straight OTT platform, you need to leave a space for you to be able to still sell your content to traditional platforms. So how you create a platform and how you go to those negotiations, you need to know what are the basic building blocks of any agreement. In more cases, this is an industry of people who are passionate, who are driven more by passion than by looking at this as a business. And looking at it as a business, I think there is a role for different institutions and groupings, media grouping, to actually actively teach young producers about these things, because with more players coming in the continent, we are going to be just selling our content and not like not owning that content. I mean, the deal that that Netflix has just signed with Ebony is great, because suddenly our classics, really giant writers are going to have a platform. But how are we going to make sure that those stories are not exclusive to only one platform? How are we going to make sure that we are still able, after doing the story about that book, the story can still go to Nigeria Broadcasting Corporation and actually benefit ordinary Nigerians who might not be on Netflix? So there's a lot of media development teaching that needs to, skilling that needs to happen for young producers. But I think we need to educate ourselves in terms of what is available. And when you're not sure, I think it's very important to just put those nuances that safeguard you about what might happen in the future, because there's been so much disruption. It's changing every day. Another platform will be introduced and you might not be able to get your product to that platform. So for me, is the important, I was looking at the other day, I was looking at how BBC, for example, is acquiring OTT content. They were very clear, they're still very clear in terms of separation between—
Is it BBC or?
BBC World.
British Broadcasting.
Yes, they're still very clear about the separation of the two platforms. So you get a deal, they're not making a deal just about one platform, because they understand, being a public broadcaster as well, they understand the need from producers from different countries to make that content available to their countrymen.
So I take it that from what you're saying, you will not take a 40-60 agreement for your content.
I think it's based on your funding, based if you have resources. If I have actually raised 60% of the funding for the production, you're going to have to give me another number, because I've already paid 60% for the production. So you need to, I think earlier when we listened to other panel, the funders looked at how the business plan, at how you're actually going to put together resources. I think once you've gone through resources and make sure that you have found partners in other platforms. Let me take, for example, if we were to decide as a continent that we want to create something that is inter-country, we want to create a big production that is inter-country, and Department of Art and Culture in those countries have decided that, listen, we're going to add the amount of money. So whoever then get that production, we already have raised success, a sizable amount for production. So you cannot give us your standards and licensing. And that's why licensing are secretive, are not standard, because it's what you put in a table once you face with a potential licensor.
Excellent, fantastic. So, Madam K, question. Do you have any challenge transiting from a purely religious content to the general ones you now produce?
Great question. It continues to be a challenge for us because we're always grouped into the religious sector. But what we're doing is changing that narrative with our content. We're choosing and selecting to work with producers and content creators who give us content that doesn't go against our values, but it fits into what lifestyle is, what an inspiring and an empowering lifestyle is. And so that's not limited to just preaching and teaching. That encompasses all facets of life. And so it's still a challenge for us. And one of the things that my co-panelist just said that I thought was key is being able to differentiate, if you will, the percentages and how you're able to work with those partners. If someone comes with me with a dynamite product that they've raised a lot of the funds for, that can show me proof of concept, that allows me to see where the investment has gone, I cannot keep them in that box and say, okay, this is what it is. The key is for us is maintaining that capacity and not just one-offs, and letting them continue to work and continue to build and make sure that we have an ongoing system of content creators that have similar content that they bring to the table. So I totally agree with what you just said in regard to not keeping us in that box. But going back to my question, in terms of building the network and trying to transition us into being seen as a viable network, not a religious station, has been through content and choosing content and choosing different themes. We focus on business, we focus on entertainment, we do a lot of music, we do movies, that again have inspirational and thought-provoking themes. We're working on some things, of course, for the Black Lives Matter movement and connecting Africa. So the content for us has been very key in changing how we're viewed because we don't want to be put in that box. And we realize that believers and Christians and all believers want to be empowered, want to be inspired. And so that's how we're redefining the network, if you will.
Excellent. So Liz, let me come back to you.
Yes.
The space that you have as Creative Garage in Kenya.
Yes.
Are you limited to the Kenyan market? Essentially, I'm asking you, are you looking at a Pan-African, even global concern, or is it just focused on the Kenyan situation at the minute?
For Calabash, our whole mantra behind it is to reclaim the African narrative. So it is telling African stories by African people, because it came from the premise of our stories are being told by other people, and it is a high time that we actually told our stories. We have stories of love, we have stories of hate, we have all those stories. And the thing about it is we started in Kenya because, it's the easiest way to do it. But we've collaborated with content producers from Zimbabwe, for example. We've done South Africa, Uganda, Tanzania as well. So we are growing out. Maybe about 90% of the content that we currently have is Kenyan content. But in the next, in our plans in the next 3 years, we'd like to be able to acquire content from around Africa.
Okay, excellent. Mr. Musira, so with Trace and the whole issue of content acquisition and what you put on your platform, how do you compensate the content owner?
Okay, so I think for Trace, we also have a company that does music distribution. So on the music distribution aspect, we then do various revenue shares. So we'll get the music, we'll distribute it to various outlets internationally across the globe, and we then have a certain agreement on what the revenue share splits would be like. And it mostly does, to a large extent, create favor in terms of the artist. But what it is we do is, there's a marketing aspect, so we'll create a platform out there that exposes your music, but also we'll create an avenue that monetizes through various distributions agreements you have. You still retain your IP at the end of the day. It's a simple distribution agreement. And so the artist really, at the end of the day, is able to even monetize that particular asset that he has beyond the Trace world. So for us, it's a very simple agreement in terms of how we do distribution deals. And at the end of the day, it really talks to artist empowerment as opposed to Trace trying to take advantage of a situation. We will give you a platform that markets your work. And at the end of the day, we then have a simple agreement in terms of a rev share on what we get back when we are able to sell your music. But also we give you a platform that shows you what revenue streams it is you're incurring. And you can have that portal on a daily, on a weekly, or a monthly basis. So it's actually quite open to the artist to be able to actually see what it is their music is generating out there.
Okay, I want to ask a question to each one, the general question that each one of you will address, which is, if you are going to take just the one challenge that you think needs to be resolved in the industry, what would that be?
So I think earlier, when we started, I did indicate that there's a need to do inter-country stories. There's a need to be involved in some form of co-production with other producers around the continent. So if there's one thing that I would advocate for, that I would hope it's one outcome for this forum, is that we take the opportunity and get a seat at the table with the African Continental Trade Agreement to make sure that at least when they talk about easing trading among African countries, that include the cost of production, that include the ability for a production company from Ghana to come to South Africa to produce content at a reasonable price. There's all 54 member states of the AU are compelled to actually make sure that in terms of arts and culture and pushing the African narrative and the Africa that we all envisage, they make a conscious and intentional effort to make sure that production of African content is supported even at the AU level.
That's very key. Before I move away from you, in terms of creating that co-production platform across the continent, I know you mentioned that the policy range and the policy makers should allow us space, us meaning members of the industry. Can the members of the industry across Africa also look at coming together and creating that space themselves, like some sort of Pan-African sort of strong collaboration organization that looks after the interest of content production for Africa to be able to tell its story to the global audience?
Certainly, they have already moved. I mentioned Africa No Filter, and there's a great trend that I'm watching, particularly coming from a philanthropist from Nigeria. If you look at CNN now, they have Africa Avant, they have doing business in Africa. All these content is actually sponsored by your Access Bank, your Glow, and your Dangote. If you look at the economy of the continent, there's a study by Bloomberg that showed that, for example, the communication company has had an income, revenue income of over 24%. They are making money. How can we make sure that our telecommunication company, which are so critical in terms of OTT space, they actually become our partners so that we can produce content for them, for their platform, but also that need for Africa to take this space. I mean, for the longest time, our eels were seen as the only eels of Africa. And if there's one thing that the Trump presidency has taught us, that politicians are politicians everywhere, and abuse of power is not exceptional to Africa, is that we as Africans have always focused on that is bad about ourselves. We need to be intentional in focusing on that makes us truly authentic African, our loudness, our flairness, and our arts. And I think our IT and communication companies who are doing well have a role to play to communicate that narrative of the Africa we all envisage.
Well said, very well said. Liz, let me come to you. What is that one challenge that you want to see resolved that will benefit the industry going forward?
Maybe I can just say this also about the kind of content that we create. We are very radical in our thinking as well. So in as much as we have your everyday stories, we also have a lot of stories around things that naturally people do not talk about, such as the LGBT community and things like that. And that being said, we have a lot of issues with government bodies, especially on licensing, and especially OTT being a new thing and they don't know how to regulate it. Then we have issues around regulations on the content that we create, and also on how the OTTs should work. So if we can start to help government institutions know more about the OTT platform and what it is and how everyone can benefit from it, then it makes it easier. So because as I said, we want to move to other African countries, but in every country that we go to, we find different issues and different regulations that are within that ecosystem. So if we can have like a standardization of that, then it makes it easier for.
All right. Do I have Danny?
Yeah, I'm still with you.
Danny, what is that challenge when it comes to content acquisition that you see, and how would you like that to be resolved?
I mean, when we look at our ecosystem, I think the biggest opportunity for Africa is really our bulging population that is mostly comprised by the youth. But I think also the sad thing is that in there lies our biggest challenge as well, because I mean, it's increasingly clear that a lot of this youth can't be accommodated in the traditional sectors. And I think the best avenue for this youth is really the creative sector. And for that's really what it is. We are at Trace, we believe in trying to bridge that gap to create an empowerment platform that is able to alleviate that particular problem. So I think for us, being able to get models where creatives can come in, create content, retain their IPs because that's their livelihood, increasingly be able to find avenues to exploit that particular asset and be able to monetize that is increasingly the biggest challenge we face and what we're trying to tackle. So that's from where we see our biggest issue that we're trying to tackle at the moment.
Okay, excellent, excellent. I have just a couple more minutes, so I will allow Kay to give me her challenge and how it can be resolved.
Well, thank you. As a platform provider and having to work with a lot of people in co-production agreements and acquisition, I'll just say for me, it's quality. We have to have a standard of quality that can cross the different demographics, not only on the continent, but see what's good coming out of Africa. A lot of, we've spoken about how Africa is now a hot button. People are very intrigued about the African-American community, let alone the Pan-African diaspora. So the quality that's needed in this content that we would like to receive and showcase needs to be set at a standard. And I think that we can get more of the telcos to invest in homegrown content if it reaches a standard that can cut across a lot of the different spectrums that we're serving.
Fantastic.